decide not to, right?
We did decide we're not doing all creatures. We're doing gifting instead. Yeah.
So your two stands with them up here.
Yeah.
These two stands stay over here.
I think that's what she's talking about.
Yeah.
If you
I don't personally find
It's a very informal stand.
very important. I mean, I can think bases are usually interesting.
Yes.
I know, I understand that, but I think that, and the other thing I haven't talked about, is that she wants everyone else does.
From Pitt, Dominic Cleavers. Yeah.
We're going, is it the pie
Yeah, I mean, like,
would it be pretty?
yeah, I mean, with the right songs and the right, right arrangements.
Let me ask her and see which way she wants to go.
Well, let me know what kind of, what exactly what she's looking for.
If it's going to be like string quartet,
If she wants a string quartet, which is great, I would suggest going with the string. I mean, I can help on the string quartet. It's not really my role. But, I mean, there's definitely plenty out there.
oh, I'm sure there are, but I think she would like this. I think if she did get the string quartet, and that Canyon and Deep, I don't know how she feels. She doesn't. She only knows 80s, But I'll find out. Maybe she knows.
I mean, yeah, and if we, whatever other, we can, we can always reimagine it. Like if she wants this particular song, maybe I could work up an arrangement, of that song for whatever.
Right. And maybe she'll what would you suggest if you did a piece? Would you just a piece to get started? Would you would you go bass, or what,
Yeah, I mean, there's,
think about it. How did you expect to play
okay, we'll put our heads together.
Yep, I know. You're busy, but
I'm not.
Oh, good.
Did your mom give you the message?
This message.
This is mating season for skunks.
Ah.
So this is not a good teacher. You might have to just call her from it.
Yeah.
Speaking of your collar, you left it hanging over on something. and I ran out of the car. Somehow it came off. Oh, it came off the trash can, and it got onto my doorknob. And I'm driving up here. I'm hearing clang on my car. On my car. Somehow I got on my doorknob of my car and clang. I'm hearing this clang. I said, "What's going on?" I looked around and there's a dog tag for your dog collar. It's in my car now since it has
This is
that.
mating season. Shawnee would get skunked at least 3 times.
Mating season for skunks or mating season for dogs? For
And
skunks.
she would, in fact, what we learned to do, they don't like light, so we keep all the backyard lit.
They're like nocturnal. They're like.
But she would get skunked everywhere. I haven't made her twice. Made my nice tea.
I'm worried that I think it's mostly liquid, but I can still smell. Yeah, I mean, like, it would take 2 months for me to try to be, you know. So what's the best one? I'll talk to you later about the best one.
Thank you, Mary. That was beautiful, as always. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to First Presbyterian Church of Jackson, Ohio. Good morning. Yes, we can talk to each other. We should talk to each other. This is a very informal service today. It's the 26th of November, except it isn't. It's the 26th of September. It's the 5th Sunday of the month. Typically, when we have 5 Sundays, even in normal, whatever that means, time, we would not do a lot this Sunday. We would get together, we'd sing hymns, people would shout hymns out, we'd challenge Mary to play the Hallelujah chorus and she'd rock it. But we can't do that yet, but we will. So what we're going to do today, it's again a very informal service. We've got musicians that are going to play. We've got 4 or 5 songs, and we still haven't figured out how many for the praise band. We've got lovely organ music today. Paul's got an amazing trombone solo scheduled, and we have our fantastic bell choir that will do 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 pieces, depending on how the Spirit moves us. So we want to welcome you all. Bear with us. It's the end of the Apple Festival. We can all say we've survived. Hopefully we've enjoyed it. It's been good to get back to it. It's good to see it go, but that's okay too. Hopefully it comes back next year. So welcome you all. Now the praise band's going to play, and then we're going to do other things. So. You and I play kind of the same song. Great is our God. Great is our God. It's been a long week for everybody. She sat down and played. She said, "Oh, I don't have my saxophone." I left my kazoos at home. Sorry. For reasons, I now own 100 kazoos, so if we want to start a kazoo band, come see me. Never been touched.
First off, as great as our God. As soon as we get scheduled in here a little bit, as soon as she finds the music.
It's in the...
Right here. Page 14 in my page.
16.
Yeah,
But
it's also... I'm good. So right now.
Next is Give Thanks.
Oh, I'm glad I asked.
Help me out here. Where's this?
It's in that blue folder. Single sheets I have. Probably.
Oh, the single sheet you cut out. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So with very few exceptions, everybody you see on this place today, and we'll see later, the Bells, have spent hours and hours and days walking the streets of Jackson with bands, or walking up and down press box steps, or calling people and saying, why do you only have one shoe? So, be kind to our band director friends and our band members.
This is Beat Out My Vision.
Right.
is complete without a Christian country piece. Country to beat.
Country to beat.
Fortunately, it's not in beat. Good country. Yeah, good country. It does nothing. You are very kind. But we appreciate it. So now Mary is going to show you what a real musician can do. Well, we have a lot of musicians. I'll go for it. Thank you very much. Who are we? Always a great question to ask. Back in February, it seems like a week ago, but it was actually in February, the Pastor Nominating Committee, the PNC, asked many of you, asked everybody, 2 questions. How do you see our church today? And how do you see our church in 5 years? Well, the PNC took your answers. We analyzed them. We grouped them up. We discussed them. We argued about them. We prayed about them. And we turned them into our mission information form, which we call the MIF. Now, I'm going to apologize now. I'm going to use a lot of acronyms, probably too many. It's an occupational hazard. And I will get back to that question we asked, that who are we question, eventually. So the MIF is the primary document that we use in our search for the next called minister for this church. You can think of it as the description of the church. We've called it the dating profile. That analog gets a little weird, but anyhow. But it talks about the size of our church, the size of our community, a lot about the demographics, and a lot of other numbers that are not terribly exciting. But it also asks, who are we? And I'm getting ahead of myself because we're not to that point yet. Once we are done with the MIF, which we are done with the MIF, it gets reviewed and approved by session because we are Presbyterian. Then it gets reviewed by Presbytery, and once they're okay with it, they don't really approve it. It's a different thing. It gets uploaded to, and you got to take a big deep breath here, the great computer in the sky over Louisville, Kentucky. So once it's in the great computer in the sky, other ministers who are looking for other new called positions, they can read our MIF that's open to them. It's open to all of you if you want to. And it becomes the basis for all the conversations that we have, the conversations between potential ministers of this church and our PNC. So in that great computer in the sky, because it's a computer, we can do stuff, we can filter. So if we filter it down to open positions in churches similar to ours, based on the size of the church and the size of our community, as of last Monday afternoon, there were 126 churches in the PCUSA that were the same as ours, pretty much, looking for new ministers. And that may sound daunting or discouraging, 126 churches. But you also have to remember there are 1,382 ministers looking for a solo minister position currently in the PCUSA. So 10 to 1 is one of those rough round numbers. So it sounds like, oh, there's a lot of churches looking for ministers. 126 churches, if you're one of those, can be. But there's a lot of ministers looking for churches. So it's just a matter of matching up. So as a PNC, and some of you in here are on the PNC, and you know this, we've had discussions with many of these ministers, not all 1,382, or we'd go crazy. We've had many, many emails. We've had some phone calls. We've had some Zoom calls. And we've heard from, like I said, many ministers in this process so far. And to be honest, several of them that reached out to us weren't really interested in us for lots of reasons. We're in Southeast Ohio, away from amenities of a big city. We don't have 1,000 members. We've had some that have contacted us, and they've stood here and said it, that said, I'd love to be your minister if it was 30 years ago and I were 30 years younger. The reasons that they might not be interested in us are numerous, but yet they contacted us anyhow, and that's one of those questions. So why did they contact us if they weren't interested? They could just move on and go read another one. Well, some of them call us to, encourage us in our search to stay faithful and just keep going. And the common phrase is they know, and we know that there's someone out there for us. God has someone in mind for us. No worries about that. Some of us called us to say, hey, I can't do it, but I know this other person who wants to do it. You should talk to them. Recommend other people. And a lot of people called, contacted, emailed to thank us for being honest, to thank us for our honesty. So, why? Why are they thanking us for our honesty? Well, you remember the process of developing the MIF that we talked about a couple of minutes ago. Because I am who I am, I skipped some steps in that. One of the things we did before we sat down to write, after we had received your input, is we read MIFs from other churches. And we read a lot of MIFs. A lot. And we found some patterns, and I thought you might find them interesting because it goes to illustrate why we're getting calls from people who can't come here but might want to if the world were different. So we lumped them into 3 main groups. One group of MIFs, these are churches again, looking for ministers. They have very specific expectations, almost demands for any potential minister. Their MIFs would describe and prescribe things like worship times, the order of service, the font on the bulletin. You get my point. They're very, very prescriptive. Basically, they were saying, if you want to come and do exactly what we, the church, tell you, our new minister, we'd love to have you. So my brain and our brain said, well, if everything's working so well, why are you looking for a new minister? Why aren't you open for any change at all? So there's that group, the very specific expectations. Another group had very unrealistic expectations. These churches, and I kid you not, these are things that we read in here. One church wanted 20 years experience as a solo minister, 20 years experience facilitating Zoom worship services. 20 years of using a platform that's been out for 8 years maybe, been in public view for maybe 3. Anyhow, and that same church also said it would be great if you were a master carpenter because we're trying to refinish our sanctuary and we could use the help. Those are unrealistic expectations out of any one person. Those churches, just like the other group, were saying, we want you to come and be the church for us. Do everything. We can sit back, we can enjoy and just watch you do your thing. Unrealistic expectations. And the third group was disturbingly large. For that group, we found that if you removed the name of the church, First Presbyterian, Second Presbyterian, Faith, Hope, all the names of churches, what was left was interchangeable with almost any other MIF in that group. There was nothing specific in that group. This is the group that we called the Happy Welcoming People group. They were just loved. They were welcoming happy people. They love kids. They love old people. Jesus, Noah, pray, all of those things. And I'm sure those aren't wrong. I'm sure those are true statements about those churches. But that's kind of up here on the surface. Even though it's important, that's not who they were. They're also very vanilla statements. I mean, if you go to a church that says we don't like kids, you're probably in the wrong place. If you go to a church that says, we don't like to pray, you're probably not in a church. So they spent a lot of time saying things that they thought ministers wanted to hear. What does that say about them? And what does it say about them in respect to their world? Could they have written the same thing 40, 50, 60, 100 years ago? Yeah, I think so. My question to them, just like I had a question to the other group, is I wonder if they know the world is different than it was 40, 50, 60, 100 years ago. I hope they do, because I hope they find a minister. So what all three of these groups had in common, and one of the things that I should say your PIF, because it's not the PIF, it's the PIF of your church. One of the thing that we took from all of that is we need to be honest, because all three of those groups had the same issue. They lacked that honest assessment of who they really are. They said what they wanted in some cases. They said, like I said, what they thought a minister might want to hear, but they didn't say much about themselves. Precious little about who they really were. And if we read those, sometimes the things they did say weren't necessarily good reflections on them. So as a PNC from the beginning, as your PNC, we took the stance that fit is more important, honesty is more important. All of those things are much more important than getting it done quickly. As you've noticed, it's not February anymore, but that's okay. So we took your input. We did all those things we talked about. We realized 3 things. We, First Presbyterian Church, Jackson, Ohio, we are a strangely, refreshingly unique church, both for Jackson and the world. One minister who contacted us said, seemed like we were trying to be a church for Christians who had been broken by other churches. I said, yeah, I think we are, and I like that. That works. 2, that because of all of that, this could be an interesting opportunity for the right person, being this standing here where I am, because I'm not going to do this. And their MIF needed to be honest. We needed to tell these stories. We needed to be very honest and open. So, because we're Presbyterians, we're going to do full 360 feedback. I'm going to share with you the answers that we provided based on all of your feedback for the PNC form MIF. See, too many acronyms. So these questions, the 4 questions we were asked, they deal with our vision for ministry, how we live in this vision, how we feel called to address the needs of our community, how a potential minister would fit into our vision for ministry, and a description of our ideal potential minister. Sounds a lot like a dating form. And these answers are who we are, at least who we say we are to other ministers. Now, those are deep questions. We probably spent a week as a PNC on each one. And this morning, we could easily spend an hour on each of those questions, talking about the depths of the questions and plumbing the complexities of our answers. But we're not going to do that, so don't go away, don't leave. We were limited to 1,500 characters, which is good because Presbyterians also like to write long things. Since we as a MIF, PIF, were PNC, it's been a long week. So we as a PNC were limited. I will be concise today. So I'm going to read you, literally, the question and the answer. See if you can hear yourself, if you can hear the church in these answers. I hope you can. This is where I have to read. What is the congregation's vision for ministry? Additionally, describe how this vision is lived out in 1,500 characters or less, please. Our vision of ministry is bringing people of different perspectives together in understanding what it means to be the Church of Jesus Christ, and using this diversity and our 185-year history to strengthen our presence in and impact on our community. We are a small, older, wealthy, left-of-center, inclusive church living in deep red rural southern Ohio. We have a sincere love for our community and a passion to improve the lives of all in our community. But we also struggle with how to be the church in a post-Christendom world. Some of us don't agree that Christendom is past. Others are searching and yearning for its return, having many pleasant memories of that past. Others are disorganized and in despair, feeling hopeless and needing to withdraw from the life of the church. And still others have moved on to the reorganization and recovery phase, accepting that church has forever changed and that we are reformed but always reforming. We believe we are called to feed our brothers and sisters, sometimes literally through meals and clean clothes, but also intellectually through discussions and studies, and spiritually through prayer, worship, and small group relationships. This calling is, pre-COVID of course, reflected in our actions. We serve free meals at Fridays. We've provided free laundry at a local laundromat. We nurtured thriving PW groups and made the commitment to become an Earth Care congregation, among many other things. So that was our answer to what's our vision for ministry. It's outside the doors. It's open. Number 2, how do you feel called to reach out to address the emerging needs of your community or constituency community? COVID forced us to change. Not just in physical modes, such as temporarily closing our facilities and streaming our worship services, but in deeper modes, such as recognizing that a hybrid version of church, in person and virtual, it exists, it's valid, and it has appeal to a broader segment of our community. COVID gave us the opportunity to deepen our ongoing intentional process of discussing who we are and where we feel we are being called to go. Supported by the deliberate work of our excellent interim minister, she's not here. Goodbye, Shelley. We realize that our strengths lie in the fact that we offer no easy answers. We feel called to embrace the intellectual heritage of our church and our denomination, to be the church that leads the why discussion. Why are people hungry, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually? Why do we permit racism to continue? Why is income inequality so great? Why do we continue to harm our planet? And infinitely many more why questions. However, all of these conversations are predicated with a fundamental how question. How is God leading us and informing us? Just as faith is dead without works, from James 2, works are dead without faith, Matthew 7. We offer no easy answers, but we are called to be a part of the discernment process leading to the solutions. Equally as important, we are also called to be a part of implementing these solutions through direct action in our community, firmly embracing the hands-on discipleship concept. Next, how will this position, how will the minister help us reach our vision and goals? As a church, we recognize we don't know the way. We also recognize that despite being in different places in understanding what it means to be the church today, and having different ideas of what the future should look like, we all have a sincere desire to move the church forward, onward, and outward. We just don't know the way. Ideally, a minister will serve as a counselor to help us through our transitions, a bridge builder to connect our diverse groups, and a collaborative motivator to help us chart our way. A minister will help us define and redefine our visions, plans, and implementation of ministry, missions, and spiritual growth. A minister will help us embrace, expand, and utilize our deep and historic love for music. See today, I hope. A minister will help us continue to develop intentionally inclusive and multi-generational experiences that embrace our growing understanding of the hybrid church, utilize technology, and expand our impact on the community. A minister will help us expand our virtual presence beyond worship, embracing online education, service, and fellowship opportunities. A minister will reflect our active role in the community through engagement with and involvement in our presbytery, other community churches, and local civic groups. A minister will help us with our call to the hard work of community transformation, from greed to generosity, from hatred to kindness, and from delusion to wisdom. Question 4, the last one. Provide a description of the characteristics needed by the person who's open to being called by our congregation. The person who succeeds in this call will be a compassionate truth teller who values the sacredness of thinking and being thoughtful about all things, while still being able to encourage hands-on actions. They will have a proactive style of conflict management and will understand the realities of life in small-town southeastern Ohio. This means recognizing that FPC Jackson is a pale blue dot in a sea of bright red. It means valuing education and critical thinking, but living and working in an area where many may not share these values. It means championing our mainline denominational heritage in an evangelical world. It means having the financial support of our membership past and present, while constantly facing the reality and perceptions of scarcity and want. In a pre-COVID discussion series, we found among the many distinctions a similarity in people who are drawn to the mission of our church. They believe if you follow Jesus Christ, how you live matters. This is evidenced through development of authentic and caring relationships, striving to live God's radical and inclusive love, and working towards peace, justice, and the common good for all people. The person who succeeds in this call will embrace this approach to living in Christ, recognizing how it is key to our growth as human beings, the growth of the church, and the growth of our community. So those were the answers we wrote as your PNC. We believe it's who we are. So do you agree with all aspects of them? Honestly, I hope not. We're a diverse church. That's what we tried to capture. Because we said conflicting things in there, so if you agreed with everything, you weren't listening, and that's fine. We worked hard to capture that diversity. That diversity is a huge, huge strength. You can go back and listen to it later on the video. It'll be fine. These answers tell me, and many ministers, the ministers who've been contacting us agree, that we are an interesting lot. We have a lot to offer our community and our world. I personally hope to come back up here soon. Soon is one of those nebulous time periods that I'm not going to define, and introduce a potential minister. We've never been closer. Actually, we're quite close. But until that happens, remember who we are. We are people who have a sincere love for our community and a passion to improve the lives of everyone in our community. We don't know all the answers. We believe if you follow Jesus Christ, how you live matters. And we all have a sincere desire to move the church forward, outward, and onward. I think that's exciting, and I hope you do too. Thank you. Now, good news.
First up is Prelude on Kelvin Grove. Traditional Scottish melody. Yeah, too. King. Next up is Rejoice the Lord is King. Oh, we got the right key. We're going to give Mary a rest and do How Great Is Our God without the piano this time. Tab 2, guys. Tab 2. The right spot. I'll give you 4 and 3. 4 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. This is a mighty fortress is our God.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was wonderful. Before the postlude, let me offer the benediction. As you go out, remember that we are being called to do the hard work of community transformation. From greed to generosity, from hatred to kindness, and from delusion to wisdom. Go out and be a part of that. Amen.